I am actually not a Trump fan. I think that he is narcissistic, he's egotistical, he's cruel. I don't like the way that he treats people. However, when I heard that Biden was no longer going to run, I was so hopeful that we would have a stand-up person to represent our country. And it's not Kamala. One of our family members was talking to us about how he chose his surgeon, and he chose a very narcissistic surgeon who is very good at what he does. He said that he ended up making this choice not because he was kind, but because he was too egotistical to let himself fail on a life-threatening surgery. And I feel that way about Trump. I feel like even though, unfortunately, even though he is narcissistic, I feel like he is too egotistical not to protect our country, and protection is what we need right now in the world that we're living in.
After everything we've seen this year, you know, failed policies, lies, failures of corruption, assassination attempts, sham trials, coming after your political opponent, bananas all out in the middle of the street, kangaroos jumping. This is how it should be this year. Exactly like this. Because this is what they're stuck with. Laughing, giggling, repeating the same thing. Has no plan. Look, just look.
So I was raised as a middle-class kid.
I grew up a middle-class kid.
I grew up a middle-class kid. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people.
You know, we have ambitions and aspirations and dreams.
The ambition, the aspiration, the dream. I started my career as a prosecutor.
No, ma'am, we asked you a question. We asked you a question. We didn't ask for a story. We didn't ask you to repeat the same stuff. We're sick of the word salad, the word spaghetti.
Prosecutor for most of my career.
Having a background as a prosecutor, I intend to create an opportunity economy.
Developing and creating an opportunity economy.
What I imagine and believe and call an opportunity economy.
But you got this. Billions to Ukraine and illegals. But what about we the people?
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met, such as food, baby formula, and the like. And you can apply now for anyone who's watching this who has been affected. There are FEMA personnel who are going door to door to interact personally with folks, especially those who do not have electricity. But also that aid, if you have electricity, can be applied for online, and I encourage people to do that. FEMA will just basically verify your address and then process.
So they get $700, but billions to Ukraine and illegal. $750.
He is being treated not just as a former president, but almost as though he is a sitting president. As Boris, you just noted, getting a briefing from FEMA, getting a briefing from the National Guard. That is not something that is typically just offered to a candidate. They are treating him as though he is a former president who is there to help. And one thing that I had noticed earlier during our 1 p.m. conversation was that Donald Trump did not have that much to offer in terms of resources since he is not a sitting president. But I will note that he and the campaign say that they have arrived in that area with trucks full of supplies that they plan on giving out. So there is something there for them to offer. He also said that he had a tanker truck full of gasoline, which obviously, if you've ever covered one of these storms, you understand that one of the first things and hardest things to come by is gasoline. So he said that he was going to be giving that out. He is clearly taking this seriously as a politician is on the ground, trying to show that he is there in support.
They didn't mention his fundraising. I think they mentioned it in a later showing, but yeah, that's Trump for you.
Trump also created a GoFundMe, which is verified, for Hurricane Helene victims. As of the top of the hour, it had raised $2 million. Trump.
Folks from First Baptist Church that have been cleaning out the church. They've been doing all the hard work.
How y'all doing?
This is the pastor.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
I'm
Thank
so
you, ma'am.
proud to be a fellow hillbilly.
There we
on this
go.
team.
God bless you. Good to meet some fellow hillbillies, ma'am. God
Yes.
bless you.
Grew up a lot like you.
Thank you,
I
sir.
made it to be president at 3.6 billion.
Well,
And you're going to
that's
become the next
fantastic.
vice president. You did a great job.
Knock on wood. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you.
Proud of everything.
Yeah. God bless you, man. I'm rooting for you. Proud of you.
Jason
Sir.
Berry, County Administrator.
Okay.
Thank you for
Yeah,
being
good to
here.
meet you, Jason.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been a big deal, but we're here.
And we're the pastor of the church is. Hey,
there.
how you doing? How you doing?
Thank you for your service and
Wow, I appreciate it, man. I need it. Yeah, it's good to be here. Hey, God bless you. Yeah, God bless you, Mike. Absolutely. Well, so tell me a little about, sir. I just want to say hello. God bless you. Thank you. So, Pastor, tell me a little bit about the church. So, I heard about 200 folks who worship regularly. Okay. And
Lots of kids.
it was up to the rafters of the church.
Yeah, the roof of the pavilion.
Okay.
So where my office is, I measure 10 feet. In
Which
the back,
is-
10 feet.
I see. Wow. Yeah.
And I drove out whenever the van moved and the trash can moved, and I knew I had to get out, go back home, and I came back and watched from the bridge.
Sure. Wow.
It was devastating. It was really hard to watch.
Yeah, I'm sure it was hard to watch. So so you think you maybe have to tear it down, rebuild it? Okay.
Neil is leading the.
For you after that, why was it important for you to say no more Trump because of his January 6th conduct, and do you stand by that?
No, I don't stand by it, and I'll tell you why. I've now lived 4 years under the Biden-Harris policies, and I have to say that those policies are not only becoming an existential threat to our country's way of life, but to our allies as well.
So when you
And it has to. No,
so
no,
Ambassador,
no.
this is, I'll let you
Ari,
finish, but
no, I
this is
wanna
so
finish.
striking. You said it was a no for me after that, after January 6th.
I did.
And here we are right now.
I did.
And you're saying it's a yes for you.
It is a yes for me. It is an absolute yes for me.
Wow.
That is how badly the Biden-Harris team have prosecuted their job.
But the whole point you seem to be making was that January 6th and that kind of attack on democracy is bigger than any
But
policy.
I am seeing so many attacks on democracy that eclipse January 6th.
Never Trumpers. Anti-Trumpers. On the Trump train this year. The tide is turning, baby.
J.D. Vance destroyed Tim Walz in the first and only vice presidential debate. Democrats had a lot of work to do as Kamala Harris continues to slip behind in the polls, with Trump surging in the swing states. Walz did not get what he needed to do done, and this puts him and the vice president in a very precarious position as we enter the final month of the campaign. And in this video, I'll be updating my 2024 electoral map to show you how the math has changed for both Harris and Trump following the debate. We'll begin by filling in the solid states for both candidates. These are states where either Harris or Trump are going to win by 15 percentage points or more. The vice president is going to easily carry Washington, California, Hawaii, as well as Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, and the District of Columbia, along with the 1st District of Maine. This gives her just 109 electoral votes. While for Trump, he is going to win Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, North and South Dakota, all of Nebraska except the 2nd District, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, South Carolina, Alaska, and the
I'll just be honest, the way everything going right now, after everything we've seen, everything else should be red. She shouldn't make it past 120, 150. After everything we've seen, especially after that vice presidential debate, everything else should be red, including New York. Yeah, everything else should be. Rick, did you really say that? Yes. Yeah. Chicago to everything else should be red. You know what I'm saying? This map should look like it was in 1984. A complete landslide.
2nd District of Maine, along with Iowa, a state he won in both 2016 and 2020 by a nearly double-digit margin. And so with these safe states filled in for both candidates, Donald Trump takes an early lead with 132 electoral votes. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz at just 109. Vance's strong performance last night is definitely going to help out the GOP in winning Iowa by the largest margin they've won it by since the 1980s. Now, for the likely states, these are races in which either candidate will win by 7 to 15 points. They are going to be noticeably more competitive, but one candidate will still maintain a slight edge. And so starting off with the likely blue states, we have Oregon and Illinois, two states that went to Joe Biden by solid margins back in 2020. He won Oregon by 16 points, Illinois by 17. Kamala Harris simply isn't going to perform as well as the incumbent president. And then up in the Northeast, we have New York, New Jersey, and Delaware. Democrats have really been struggling, especially in New York and New Jersey. I mean, in New York, their leaders have just been plagued by scandal. First, in 2022, we had the resignation of Andrew Cuomo as governor, and then Kathy Hochul wasn't any more popular. Her first lieutenant governor resigned due to scandal, and then just a few days ago, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who is, of course, a Democrat, was indicted on charges of corruption. And so really this has tanked support for Democrats.
I wonder why. You know, I wonder why. Corrupt, man. And Trump predicted it too. But hey, he's a threat to democracy. A threat to the corrupt system. Our sweet apple pie democracy. Dictator on day one, Hitler. They're in for a rude awakening, man. I'm telling you. If things are done fair. Because we know what happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. If things are done fair, they up for history is gonna be made on this map, y'all.
In the Empire State, Bob Menendez in New Jersey isn't helping them out either, and so these three traditionally blue states, New York, New Jersey, and Delaware, are going to be a lot more competitive than they were 4 years ago when Joe Biden won all three of them by 15 percentage points or more. And finally, we have Colorado, a state that Biden won by nearly 14 points in the last election. I'm going to give Harris the benefit of the doubt. I have her winning Colorado by just over 7 points.
Benefit of the doubt.
It's barely going to be a likely blue state. But at this point, Colorado is still relatively liberal. It will be quite difficult for Trump to make too many inroads there. However, he will definitely do much better than he did in 2020. Now it's time for the likely red states, states that Trump is going to win by 7 percentage points or more. We're going to begin with Ohio, a state that he won in both of the last two elections. He actually flipped it back in 2016. Before this, I went to Obama by 3 points in 2012. And then in 2020, everybody thought Ohio was going to be a lot more competitive. Polls showed that he was going to win it by just 1%. But in the end, Trump carried the Buckeye State by an 8-point margin. He's going to win it by a double-digit margin this time around. There's no doubt Ohio is likely red. And then down in Texas, we have another state that was thought to be very competitive in 2020, despite it not having gone blue since 1976. People thought Joe Biden could actually pull off a victory in the Lone Star State, but that was never going to happen. Trump eventually won it by 6 points. Not really the best margin. He won it by 9 in 2016, but against Kamala Harris this November, the former president is on track to win Texas by 10 percentage points or more. Before we continue, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed. 3 points. He eventually lost it by that margin, which came as a pretty big surprise. He did worse than Hillary Clinton 4 years prior, and today, Florida is no longer in play. It isn't considered a battleground. It's not a swing state. It's not even remotely competitive. Donald Trump is going to win by 7 to 10 points. We saw in 2022, Governor Ron DeSantis got reelected by a 20-point margin. The race in Florida is going to be more competitive on the presidential level, but there's no doubt Republicans are going to win it for a third time in a row with Trump at the top of the ticket. So Florida will be the final likely red state going to Trump. And so with both the solid and likely states now filled in for both candidates, the former president continues to lead with 219 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 191. Trump is now just 51 electoral votes away from the presidency. We're now left with 12 states. These are going to be the lean and tilt states, the most competitive states on the map. Together, they're worth 128 electoral votes, less than a quarter of the Electoral College, but they really do wield all the power. It is in these states where the election is won or lost, especially key states like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. So we're going to start off with the lean blue states for Harris. First state she's going to win by 2 to 7 points. And we're going to begin up in the Northeast with New Hampshire and Maine. She's probably going to win these states by the midpoint of Clinton and Biden's margins from 8 and 4 years ago. In 2016, Hillary Clinton won New Hampshire by 0.37. She won Maine by 2.9. Joe Biden did a little better. He won New Hampshire by 7.4, Maine by 9.1. Kamala Harris is probably going to win both of these states by around 4 to 6 points. She is definitely favored, but these are not going to be impressive victories by any means. Moving on down to New Mexico, this is a state that Democrats have not lost since 2004. Joe Biden actually won it by a double-digit margin in 2020, but Democrats really aren't going to do too much better in New Mexico in the coming decades. They're probably going to lose it in less than 20 years as the Hispanic vote continues to shift to the right, and New Mexico is the only state in the country with a majority Hispanic electorate. They really are starting to favor Trump and the GOP more and more, and so that is why I have it as a lean blue state. Kamala Harris, believe it or not, is doing much worse with minority voters than Biden was in 2020. She's basically performing on par with Hillary Clinton and her performance with minority voters from 2016, which is a really bad sign because minority voters make up a huge block of the Democratic coalition. And so New Mexico being lean blue is not a good sign for the vice president in a state that Biden carried by 11 points in the last election. And now for the lean Trump states, we have quite a few of them, many of them in the Sun Belt. I'm going to begin with Arizona, which has quickly become the most conservative of the 8 swing states. I also include Virginia as one of those toss-ups, and we might even start to include Minnesota after this point. But Arizona, out of all the states left, is probably going to go to Trump by the largest margin. He's been absolutely dominating in the polls there. He's led in all 10 of the last 10 polls conducted in the state. His odds in Arizona, according to the betting markets, are higher than his odds in both North Carolina and Georgia. And so a state that Biden won in the last election, Kamala Harris is almost starting to lose it this time around. Arizona is going to be lean red, with the former president on track to win by around 3 to 4 points. And then moving out east, we have North Carolina, the only swing state that's gone to Trump in both 2016 and 2020. He won it by 4 points 8 years ago, and then 4 years ago, he won the state by just over 1%. But this was a really good surprise for Republicans because basically all the polling said that they were going to lose the Tar Heel state entirely, but somehow Trump came out with a victory. And so today, he's on track to win North Carolina for a third time in a row. He's dominating the polls just like in Arizona, but Mark Robinson is not going to help Trump here. He's probably going to pull him down, but Trump has done very well in North Carolina in the 2 elections he's running already, and he's going to do well once again. I see him winning by around 3 percentage points. Next up in Georgia, this was the most competitive state in 2020. It was decided by the smallest margin. Just 0.24% of the electorate separated the incumbent president and the former president, but today, there's no doubt Trump is on track to win Georgia back. Biden's victory here in 2020 was the first for any Democrat since 1992. Kamala Harris is not going to make history again. She simply isn't performing nearly as well as Biden was in the last election. In 2016, Trump actually won the Peach State by 5 points, so Georgia still is a fundamentally red state, and so it's going to go back into the GOP column this time around. And what we're seeing is that North Carolina, Georgia, and Arizona, these 3 states are slowly becoming more and more reliable for Trump. He can basically count on all 3 of these states' electoral votes, which means that out of the remaining states, with the exception of Nevada, he only needs to win 1 more to clinch the presidency. And that state is probably going to be Pennsylvania. The Keystone State has been noted by basically everyone as being the most important state for both sides. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, he gets to over 270. And the reason why it's Pennsylvania is because, yes, Trump can definitely win states like Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada, maybe even Virginia. But if he wins these states, he's already going to have won Pennsylvania by a larger margin. So in terms of the states that are necessary for him to win the White House, Pennsylvania is probably going to be the one that gets Trump over 270 electoral votes. He's already taken the lead in the polling averages, and he's definitely favored to win back the Keystone State. He won it by 0.72 in 2016. This was a very close margin. This was the first time a Republican won Pennsylvania in 24 years. And then in 2020, he lost it narrowly to Joe Biden by just over 1%. And today, he's going to win it back again. Pennsylvania is going to flip-flop
81 million
back to the
votes.
GOP, with Kamala Harris performing.
Now he's on the beach. He's taken more vacations than any other president. A cheap fake, a deep fake.
Much worse than Biden and Clinton were in the polling at this point in 2020 and 2016. We have one final lean state, and that will be Wisconsin. After that disaster of a debate for Walz, he is going to hurt Harris now in Wisconsin. For a while, people thought Pennsylvania would vote to the right of Wisconsin just because Walz was going to give the vice president a boost in Wisconsin, as he is the governor of Minnesota, and the two states share a pretty long border. But at this point, it doesn't seem like Walz is helping out Harris too much. Trump is going to win Wisconsin by a lean margin. He's going to carry it by just over 2 points. In fact, Trump has done very well in Wisconsin in the last two election cycles. He won it by 0.76% in 2016, but then when he lost it in 2020, he was supposed to lose the state by 8 points. He lost it by just 0.6. Polling today shows a tie between Trump and Harris, which is a very good sign for the Trump campaign. And even when Biden won in 2020, he only won the state by 0.6, a smaller margin than Trump's from 40 years prior. And now we're left with just 4 states. These are going to be tilt states decided by 2 percentage points or less. I'm going to get the 2nd district of Nebraska out of the way first. It is going to be tilt blue. But then out in Nevada, this is a state that Trump can flip. It's a state he's never won before, as no Republican has carried Nevada since George W. Bush in 2004. But today, Nevada is shifting to the right. In 2016, Hillary Clinton carried the state by 2.4%. Joe Biden won it by the exact same margin in 2020 when he improved off of Clinton's margin in basically every other state. There were only 5 states where Biden did worse than Clinton. And in 2022, Republicans won the governorship here. Another clear sign that Nevada is shifting in favor of the GOP. And so this November, Trump has a very good chance at winning the state for the first time as a Republican in 20 years. And then the final state to go to the former president is going to be the Wolverine state of Michigan, a state he won back in 2016 against Hillary Clinton by a 0.2% margin. He lost it to Biden by 2.8, but he's on track to win it back this time around. Polling severely underestimated support for Trump in Michigan 4 years ago. He was supposed to lose the state by 7 points. He eventually lost it by less than 3, and today the polls in Michigan are basically a tie, just like they are in Wisconsin. And when the polls are tied, you can be pretty confident that Trump is going to come out on top. And so the Michigan is going to be the final red state on the map. It's going to be tilt in favor of the former president. And now we're left with both Minnesota and Virginia. Virginia has always been very competitive this election cycle. Before Joe Biden dropped out, he was on track to lose the state entirely based on the polling average. And today, Kamala Harris isn't really doing that much better. Many polls have her leading by just 3 points. But considering Joe Biden carried the state by 10 points in the last election, I still do see Harris squeaking out a narrow victory. And then in Minnesota, Tim Walz's performance is not going to help him too much in the state. Minnesota is always going to be competitive. If Walz wasn't the Democratic vice presidential nominee, there's a very good chance Trump would currently be favored in the state. But Walz is still the governor. He's still going to give Harris a boost, but definitely not as much as he was.
I think it's gonna go red. Yeah. You should have went with the Jewish guy.
Going to give her before this debate. And so Minnesota, the last state on the map, is going to be tilt blue. It's going to be just as competitive as it was in 2016 when Hillary Clinton pulled out a 1.5% victory. Nobody thought it was going to get that close. And so following the first and probably only Vance-Walz debate, Trump is at 312 electoral votes.
112. I think it's, I can't wait to come back to all these videos we've done and these maps to see how this thing turned out. And I honestly think it's gonna turn out way different than this, y'all. If things are done fair, after everything we've seen and covered, I think history is gonna be made, man. That it's gonna look completely different. You know, that it's gonna look completely different. I'm just saying, just saying. What do y'all think, man? Things are done fair. Fair. You know, I'm with all that, you know, I'm with the same, well, I wish they do 1 week or same day, yeah, proof of ID, proof of citizenship. You know, because we know what happened at 3 o'clock. And right now they're flying them in. We know about your mail. We know about your mail-in. We know about the mail-in. We know about what took place, man. And then some of them came back and say, "Well, some of those, you know, still doesn't qualify, you know, as cheating." They said it wouldn't have made a difference. All right, that's what they say. Yeah, it's corrupt, man. Corrupt. But after everything we've seen with this lady, not answering questions, there's no plan. There's nothing but word salads, lying, failed policy. I don't see how anybody can clap and go to the. I just don't see it, man. Just don't see it. But I love y'all. Let me know what y'all think. And I will catch you beautiful people in the next one. Peace and love, y'all.